So if there's anything that is personal, if you want to wait until the end to ask about it when I turn off the recording, that's absolutely fine. Otherwise, just ask if you want, or pop it into the chat box if you have a question. I'm just going to give it another couple of minutes. So anybody who is here already, just take a couple of minutes to have a nice, take a few nice relaxing, grounding breaths. If you were like me, you're trying to get kids out of the hall, barking dog outside, shouting husband, trying to clear the whole space, and then come in here and go, welcome. So here I am, all 62 years of me. I was told today I look great for 62, which made me feel so special. So yeah, thank you. You know who you are. And apparently that was shared in the group. That woman is 62 years of age. Would you believe it? I nearly got weak this morning when I heard that. I am 50 years young, and I was struggling enough with. So I am here, 50 years of me and my experience, and I just want to get this information out into the world and help other wise women get their information and their wisdom into the world as well. So we're here in our women's circle, and we all have something to bring to this circle. So take your place with pride, whether you're a complete newbie at homeopathy, whether you've been using it for months, whether you're an actual teacher of it, a homeopath. We all have something special. Maybe set an intention for this actual chat. Maybe it's to lose some of the fear you have around your family getting sick, or you getting sick, or maybe it is maybe you want to reclaim a bit of your own health, and or maybe it's something else. So just think about setting an intention. And I hope everybody has pen and paper, because there's going to be loads of information coming at us. Thanks, Kathy. It felt really good. 62. I was told I was glowing. I was glowing. So it's looking good for 62, a bit rough for 50, but that's it. So vomiting and diarrhea we're talking about. Not very nice things, and often when these bugs come into the house, a few people will get them at once, and you could be trying to get well yourself, and then you've got somebody else coming down with it. So they can be fairly nasty, but they do have their place as well. There's just more people coming in. I'll just give another minute before I really get into this. So we're really talking about the digestive system. So what goes on between mouth and anus, and what we take in really reflects the quality of our health. When we take in food, we turn it into fuel, and it can be good grade stuff, or it can be low grade, cheap fuel. And my special guest tonight is Dee Morris, and she's going to talk more about that, about how we're fueling these bodies, what's fueling the food that's going into these bodies, how to work on it. Even if your gut is under par, there's always things we can do. And she has so much information. She was giving me bullet points yesterday or Saturday, and I was just like, wow, wow, wow. So first of all, before we go any further, I wanted to talk about a message I was sent today. I sent a voice message. Last week, we talked about aconite and how important it is to treat shock in the body, and how shock can splinter the energy in the body and make us susceptible to other things, to other ailments, to other illnesses. And it might seem completely unrelated to what has actually happened to us, but it's just that our internal energetic defense has been overridden, and that's our vital force That's the energy in our body, and that's what happens when we get a really big shock. So one of you lovely ladies who was here last week had a near miss. A car nearly ran her off, nearly knocked her down. She was walking, and the next day she developed. It started with feeling cold, very low energy, and went into very severe pain in her back over her kidney area, and happened quite quickly over the space of a day. This awful pain, and she ended up having a phone consultation with a doctor who was afraid that there was a blockage in her gallbladder because the pain was so severe and where it was and all of that, and he wanted her to go straight to A&E to get bloods done, to get on a drip, all of that, get started in that whole system. And she realized that she hadn't taken enough aconite. She realized this all started after she'd had this near miss. And today, I think it's 3 days since this happened, she sounds back to her old self. So this is somebody who could be in the hospital system right now, having tests done and still in a lot of pain and probably getting worse. And she knew it was her kidney area that was in bother. That's where the pain was. So she knew that was fear and that was shock. And she was able to clear that herself with homeopathy. There's also somebody else here who, this wasn't a recent thing, this is a good few years ago. She came to, I think, my first class. I was doing some one-to-one classes, and I covered arnica and aconite in my first class. And she went home, and I think the next morning came across a car accident where there was nobody seriously injured, but everybody was in shock. And she got straight away to treating people with aconite, and she was able to see the shakes stopping in the people who had been involved in the crash. She was able to calm them down. There's always something you can do. And I'm not saying that you go against doctors' advice or that you don't go to hospital if you've been in an accident, but there's always something you can do, and you can take homeopathy alongside conventional medicine. We have been in the car ready to go to the hospital with kids and firing in aconite and arnica, and we might get 10 minutes down the road and everything settles. And you're like, oh, okay, so there's no need to go anywhere. Just remember that. And like that woman said today, when in doubt, take an aconite for yourself, give it to whoever you're treating. Aconite is just the #1 remedy as far as I'm concerned for shock. And we mightn't realize that we're shocked, but people have different things that shock them. For some person, it could be a very sudden violent headache, because we can think, oh my God, what is this? This is really bad. This is going to get worse. How am I going to manage the kids? Yada, yada, yada. We start spiraling. Aconite is a good one. Just go in with it as your first line of defense. Okay, let me see. Is there anybody else waiting to come in? So I'm talking about vomiting bugs, that sort of thing. IBS is something, irritable bowel is something that a lot of women are living with and have kind of accepted that this is just me. I have to deal with this. Homeopathy can help you to deal with the flare-ups. If it's a long-term thing, go to your homeopath, go to somebody and get them to get you up to a certain level where you're able to deal with the flare-ups yourself. Some of these remedies will help with flare-ups. But nobody has to live with IBS, and it's really, really linked to anxiety, and the stomach in general is linked to anxiety. We hold our anxiety in our stomach. You know, we can get sick with worry. People will say that I'm sick with worry, or I'm sick into the pit of my stomach. It's the time of year now when kids are going back to school and they're presenting with stomach pains, and doctors aren't able to find anything wrong with them, but it is anxiety. Sorry, I'm just getting a load of messages. I want to make sure that I wasn't someone trying to get in. And just because somebody can't come up with an explanation for this, it doesn't mean that the pain or the nausea is not there. Our minds experience so many different emotions every single day, and if the emotions stayed in our minds, we'd end up with serious mental health issues. So what happens is the body takes over. and these symptoms and these emotions drop down into the body, and the body tries to process them. The body tries to process them through sickness, but it's just a warning. You know, there's something you need to address here. Sickness is only ever a warning, and it's like, yeah, it's just your warning. You don't have to worry about sickness. We want to take the fear out of getting sick, take the fear away of getting sick, and know that it's our body is protecting our mind. And if we can keep the body processing the stuff that's going on in our heads, we'll be grand, we'll be fine. So back to the vomiting and diarrhea. This happens when there is maybe like a flare-up of some long-term digestive thing like Helicobacter or IBS, or more commonly, especially now, is just it's a bacteria that's gotten in, and our bodies will maybe only allow it to get so far, and it'll come back up in the form of vomiting, or if it's gone further, then the stomach will push it through, so it becomes diarrhea. And it's all good, and it's a great way of clearing out the system very quickly, because they're usually over in 24, 48 hours. But there can be a few complications like dehydration, which is a serious thing. Also, for children, vomiting could be linked to other things like ear infections or chest infections, or a UTI. For us adults as well, it can be a UTI. So do check other symptoms. Don't just assume it's just vomiting and diarrhea. Always a good idea when you're taking somebody's case, as in you're writing out all their symptoms, you start at the top of the head and you work down. You say, have you got a headache? Is there anything wrong with your eyes, your sinus, your mouth, your throat? Just work the whole way down. And when you do it, take a few minutes and do it systematically, go right through the body. You'll come up with something else if it's there, because sometimes the biggest issue hides the other things. So if somebody is really consumed and anxious about getting sick, they're not going to think about the bit of a niggle that they have in their kidneys, or the fact that they keep needing to pee. It's not such a big problem. They're more concerned about the initial one, the vomiting or whatever. Let me see. Anybody else here? Is everybody okay so far? So dehydration. Sometimes as well, actually, before I talk about dehydration, children with a chest infection or a cough or sinusy stuff, they could vomit, and it's really mucousy vomit. And that's just their way of clearing, because the kids are not amazing at blowing their noses or coughing hard enough to get this stuff up. So it'll come so far, they swallow it back down, and it'll come out in vomit, which is just another really good way of clearing it out of the body. So dehydration, do look out for the signs. When somebody is losing bodily fluids, be it like excess pee or vomiting or diarrhea or sweating, you know, if somebody has been doing a lot of exercise, running a marathon, or bleeding even, there is a remedy for this. It's China. I'll talk about in a second. But some of the symptoms of dehydration that you need to look out for are, the first one is a really dry, sticky mouth. You just ask somebody to open their mouth, stick out their tongue. The mouth should be lovely and glistening and moist. And if somebody is severely dehydrated, it won't be like that. It'll just look very dry, tongue almost stuck to the lips or to the roof of the mouth. They won't be peeing that much, and so we need to always look out for that with babies, especially to see if they're peeing enough. If they're peeing, they're probably not dehydrated. But if you think that they're not actually peeing enough, then look out for that. They might feel really cold in themselves. The pulse might be a bit fast. They could be drowsy. And in babies as well, the fontanelle, the soft spot up here, can actually get a bit sunken looking if they're dehydrated. So we have to always keep checking for that. I've had my kids with vomiting bugs that lasted 48 hours and had to bring them to the doctor twice in that time to see were they okay. And this is when I was a young mum. And because I was going in with this #1 remedy for dehydration, China, kids never got dehydrated. So I was able to bring them home again. And the doctor would just say, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. They're not dehydrated. They'll get through it. So the remedy is China, China. That's your main dehydration remedy. And the way to give it, if somebody is vomiting, diarrhea, or a fever where they're sweating an awful lot because it's loss of bodily fluids, put one china into the glass of water that they have and get them to keep sipping it. You're not going to overdo this when they're vomiting, when they are, when they've got diarrhea. And sometimes, we take over-the-counter stuff for vomiting, maybe Motilium, or for diarrhea, is it Imodium, something like that. That's fine. It'll slow down what's happening, or maybe even stop it altogether. But just remember that bacteria that the body is trying to expel as quick as possible, that's staying in there. That's not moving. Okay, so a bit more about China, because I put into their water. So diarrhea with fevers, where there's a lot of stuff coming out of the body. It could be sunstroke. Sunstroke is another reason that people get really dehydrated very quickly. Gastroenteritis, which sounds awful, but it's infection, inflammation in the gastric system. It could be even vomiting with very painful periods. China is a remedy for this. I treat some people, their pain is so bone deep when they have periods that they actually vomit. That's one of the remedies. Or it can be diarrhea that or vomiting that's come on and you've no known cause. Nobody else is sick in the house. Little person or big person isn't particularly anxious, and anxiety can make people vomit and have diarrhea very easily. So if you can't find a reason for it, do think of China. And they usually can't think of food at all. The thoughts of it completely put them off. I give China a lot after hemorrhaging, after childbirth. Okay, and we will move on to Arsenicum album. So this is probably our next biggest remedy for vomiting and diarrhea. And it can be from food poisoning, from stomach bug, or from anxiety. This is a really, really anxious remedy. Or it can be a flare-up of something like IBS. If all of these other things are going to fit in with the IBS, first thing you have to look for with Arsenicum album or arsen alb, as they sometimes call it, is burning. They'll be burning somewhere in the body. So if they are vomiting, they could feel there's burning here or in the stomach, or if there's diarrhea, it could be burning diarrhea. And if it's a baby that you're treating and they can't tell you that it's burning, say you're changing a nappy, an arsenicum nappy, the little bum will be red. And there's crampy stomach pains with this one. Crampy, burning stomach pains, not nice. They often feel quite chilly in themselves, even though they have this internal burning, they can feel cold in themselves. And they need a lot of reassurance. They're really, really anxious. They're like, no, you're okay, you're going to be fine. They'll want to know what you're giving them, what's in it, what's this going to do. Please stay with me, don't leave me on my own. And that can be a child or an adult, or you might feel it yourself that you really want, you feel scared, you feel really, really, really scared. They're thirsty. People who need this are thirsty, but they're only able for small sips of water, and they might even vomit the water back up as soon as it hits the stomach. The cold water hitting a hot stomach might come straight back up again, but they are thirsty. Sometimes when you give a remedy for these types of things, it can seem like it's made it worse. Suddenly they're getting sick more, or there's more diarrhea. But all that's happened is the whole process has been sped up. The body has been given a bit of a boost. It's able to get through it quicker and easier. That's a good sign if that actually happens. They might end up giving a remedy after every time somebody has a bout or whatever, whichever one it is. The arsenicum album, sometimes they'll have vomiting and diarrhea together. And just crying and anxious and feeling awful. And we'll move on. So the next one is Nux vomica. You know, all these remedies that we use, they're all made from plants or elements or minerals or something. I remember years ago, I posted about Nux vom on my page, and somebody went into Google and copied and pasted what was up on Google for Nux vomica and said, "Oh my God, you're giving people a poisonous plant." Nux vom is a plant, and when it's ingested, it causes the same symptoms that the remedy can heal. And that's how we know what all of these remedies do, because students at some stage, or homeopaths, have taken these particular remedies until we induced symptoms in ourselves. And it's a tiny amount that's in the plant, that's in the pill, and it's only ever enough to stimulate the body, to kickstart the body's own healing system, so it's able to take over the job itself. So Nux vomica, the hangover remedy, everybody knows it's the hangover remedy, but it's not just, so it's too much of something, too much alcohol, too much rich food, too much, maybe you're out for a night and you suddenly go back to social smoking, or maybe the kids, Halloween is big Nux vomica time for Halloween, where they stuff themselves silly and then end up really, really sick, feeling awful. Christmas, too much food, too much sweets again, feeling awful. But this can also be used for maybe a flare-up of gastroenteritis or an ulcer. Again, they're ailments of too much, especially the ulcer. There's too much of something going in. I hope my internet stays. So with this particular remedy, the person might feel really sick, but they won't be getting sick so much. Or they could be vomiting an awful lot, and you're able to say, well, yeah, you were out last night and you drank this, 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 and this, you were smoking with a big heavy meal. So don't get hung up on one little detail. But in general, if somebody has had too much of something, hasn't been able to digest it all, it could be too much family. Again, it's a Christmas remedy when you're stuck with people that you possibly wouldn't spend so much time with. You're all together and you're all eating and you're all drinking. It's just too much to stomach. You can't stomach it. So they could be gagging or trying to get sick, but it's not helping. They're not able to. And obviously, somebody who needs this remedy is going to feel much worse, and more than they'll feel worse if they try to eat and if they've been social smoking. Don't know why I'm saying social smoking. Smoking. Everybody's vaping now, not smoking anymore, which has its own issues. That is Nux vomica. And we'll move on. I'm trying to pick remedies that are all kind of different to each other, because some of them are kind of samey, and you just need to read through them. You might even have to give two remedies because you can't differentiate. But I want to help you to see that vomiting and diarrhea presents itself very differently in people. It's not just, oh, well, I'm sick. You need to get people talking. You need to use your observations, see how they are in themselves. Everybody is different. We all express sickness, healing differently. And do keep your notebook. I think I said it before, but for the new people or people watching later on YouTube, you'll find that members of your family that you're trying to treat or yourself will resonate with one particular remedy more than others. So they might need actually Nux vomica for a cough. They might need it for a stomach bug. They might need it for period pain. It might be a really good go-to remedy for them. So if you write it down, then at least you're remembering it, because when we're in a state of fear ourselves and maybe slightly shocked and panicked and tense, we don't remember this stuff. We like to think we would, but we don't. Okay, moving on. Cocculus. That's Cocculus. So cocculus is known for car sickness, but it's not the only car sickness or motion sickness remedy. But I'm mentioning that because very often the person who needs cocculus has that kind of woozy, dizzy feeling. So this is different to the others. And like this could be morning sickness, it could be exhaustion after staying up all night looking after somebody else who's sick. This is the night watcher's remedy for people who are looking after other people. So, you know, elderly parents either up at night. It's the mother's remedy for exhaustion. But when it is needed for vomiting, nausea, there is that wooziness, that kind of dizziness, maybe feeling a little bit out of it. So they could feel like they're actually on a boat. They could feel a little bit unsteady. It's balance is a big thing with this remedy. They're not fully balanced, and that could come on from anything. I had one of my kids treated recently for car motion sickness. She'd gotten really, really bad with motion sickness, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. And I brought her to, again, Kieran Burke down in Sligo, osteopath, and he figured out that there was a little bone out of place in her foot. She'd hurt her ankle at some stage. It was a little tiny bone out of place. And because that was out of place and everything else was trying to compensate, by the time it got to the head and we were moving, combine those two things, moving and this imbalance, it was causing the sickness. And so it was fixed very, very quickly just by doing a few exercises that popped the bone back into place. Energetic medicine is amazing. It's just, I'm in such awe of it every single day, and especially when I see it working with my own kids. I know I have clients all the time who are saying, yeah, this is working really well, but when it's close to home, I just go, oh, wow, this is magic. So that's cocculus, and we're moving on to pulsatilla. This is the second last remedy. So pulsatilla could be from food poisoning as well. It could be from stomach bug. Again, it could be from painful periods. Ice cream is a big thing that can cause pulsatilla type vomiting and diarrhea. So these people are generally warming themselves, unlike, say, the arsenicum person who's chilly. They feel warm and they have an air hunger. They need fresh air. They feel better when they're out in fresh air. Symptoms may actually not completely disappear, but almost disappear. And if they're inside, they'll have the window open, they'll be over beside a window, just very hot and bothered in themselves, flushed in the face. They often don't sweat that much. It can just manifest as heat in the face. So very, very red. Again, not a nice way to be when you're experiencing nausea or vomiting, just being overly hot in yourself, especially that heat up around the head. They love sympathy. They need sympathy. They need reassurance. They could be quite clingy in themselves. And again, that's normal enough for a child to be clingy when they're sick. In an adult can't really be so clingy. What was the name? It's Kieran Burke. Kieran Burke. Anybody who wants his number, I will pass it on. He's just unreal. He's fabulous. He is on Facebook, but I don't know his Facebook page. Okay, so an adult who cannot get the cuddles and the sympathy that they want might turn on people a little bit and might say things like, oh, nobody cares about me. I'm sick and nobody's minding me. Kids don't generally have to resort to that to get what they need, generally. And this is a remedy. When people need this remedy, they're not thirsty at all. It's actually hard to get water into them. So arsenicum album and pulsatilla, both are remedies for vomiting, diarrhea. Both are remedies for people who feel anxious and need reassurance, constant reassurance, and company. They want company. So how do you differentiate between the two of them? Well, arsenicum album is going to have burning somewhere, and they're going to be thirsty. Pulsatilla doesn't really have burning, and they're not thirsty. They don't want water. But also ask yourself, how is this person in front of you making you feel? A pulsatilla person, generally, if it's not an adult who's complaining that nobody loves them, nobody's minding them, if it's a child who's in a pulsatilla state and they're needy and clingy and want reassurance, you're actually very happy to give it, because it's a nice kind of clinginess. It's a nice kind of neediness. So you might find yourself sitting there cuddling a little one for ages and being okay with that. But if it's somebody who's in an arsenicum stage or state, that's not so nice. It's not so nice to deal with, and you'll find yourself more irritated, not so inclined to sit there and cuddle them all day long. You'd be more like, I've told you you're going to be fine. It's ridiculous. It's only a vomiting bug. It's going to pass. Everybody else has had it. Everybody else is fine. They bring about different responses in us, these different remedies. So if you feel really strung out and impatient and done, touched out, it's possible arsenicum. If you're sitting there lapping up the cuddles, it's possibly pulsatilla your little person needs. How are we all doing? Any questions? This is a big lump of ginger that's actually floating around my glass, in case anyone's wondering what fell into my water that I haven't noticed. Okay, the last one for vomiting, bug, could also be constipation in this one. Just feeling rotten, not able to let it out, is bryonia. And bryonia experiences waves of nausea every time they move. And the only way that they can control that is by lying absolutely still. Even opening their mouth to answer, yeah, no, I'm feeling okay, I'm feeling better, scale of 1 to 10, that's going to bring up more nausea. So they would rather not talk at all. They would rather be on their own, lying still, and dealing with this horrible nausea that's just sitting there. So they'll feel it much worse if they turn their head, if they sit up, they try to answer, and they often get a headache, very bad headache, that they just feel like holding their head like that when they have nausea or diarrhea. So it's not nice. Well, none of them are nice, but so when you give somebody who's in this state a remedy, what you'd expect to see is a little of that tension in their bodies being released. You don't need to see the vomiting, the diarrhea stopping immediately. You just need to see them a little bit more at ease in themselves, because that's not nice how they're feeling, that they can't move. Can you imagine the tension in someone's body if they're afraid to move because they're going to get sick? So you just want to see them take a breath, a nice deep breath, because then they have been able to move a little bit more. Even to expand the lungs a little bit is an improvement. These are thirsty people, but unlike Arsenicum album, who is only thirsty for little gulps, they will drink a big glass of water. Once they get up and they get themselves stabilized, they could drink a big glass of water. Possibly it'll come up again. And don't, if you are treating somebody who's doing this, who's vomiting each time they've had water or whatever, don't give up on the water. Just a tiny little bit until their body is able for it, and it's going to have that China remedy in it as well. So they are my remedies. I really want to get Deirdre Morris on. Deirdre is my buddy, and I said that we should buddy up. We really should buddy up, and have somebody to run things by. And I run things by Dee, let me see, can I get you on here? Several times in the week. Pin. And there she is. And let me just unmute you. Or you might have to unmute yourself. Okay. So welcome, Deirdre. I am absolutely delighted. Deirdre. I'm delighted to have you here, and I'm handing the whole thing over to you. Tell us all about yourself and what you do.
Oh, I'm so privileged, and thanks so much for the opportunity to just do this and to just talk to these lovely women and kind of actually, I hope not drone on, but I hope kind of open a door to gut health and fermentation the same way it was open for me. Actually, now I think about it, nobody opened it for me. I opened it myself. So maybe I can give somebody a prompt. You said last week that I was a recovering solicitor, and that is pretty much the way I would describe myself. I came to homeopathy because I had practiced for, I think, upwards of 20 years, and I got the opportunity to retire, and which was fabulous, but I was unclear about what direction I wanted to go in. So at that stage, I had a very good friend who was a German vet who lived down in Waterford. And she said to me, did I want to do a short acute course that the Irish School of Homeopathy were offering? And I said, oh, come see, come sa. I was just a bit worried about kind of disappearing into the wallpaper. And because I'd worked and I'd had that focus. So I said, okay, I'll go along to it anyway. And we went along on the Saturday. We were all sitting in the room, and the teacher said if we'd like to introduce ourselves and say what we knew about homeopathy. And I thought, oh my good God, what am I going to tell lies or something? And anyway, it got inexorably nearer and nearer to me, and eventually it got to me, and I just thought, I'm going to say it like it is. And I said, yeah, my name is Dee Morris. I said, I have no experience of homeopathy, unlike these people who are seeing hay fever cured and migraines cured and so on. I have no experience whatsoever. I said, and frankly, I'm not even convinced that it works. And she said, because I'm straight talking, she said, she roared laughing and she clapped her hands together and she said, excellent. She said, our class skeptic. So that was great. I thought, no matter what happened, I thought, I'll enjoy this. It'll be, it'll be a buzz, and I'll see how it goes. So one Saturday when we were I'd say about 2 weeks or 3 weeks into the course, I live on a farm. That's the background. I married a farmer, and my husband was farming strongly at the time. And I came home on the Saturday, and Paul said to me, oh, the vet has been out for that calf again. He says it's pneumonia. Now, this was the third time that the vet had been out, and the vet said there really wasn't anything else that he could give him. We would just have to see how he went. But the likelihood was that he would actually have to put the animal down. So Paul said to me, there you are, the way husbands do. And I said, oh my good God. So I was dug into the books and I looked at the animal, exactly what Antoinette is talking about you doing. I looked at them. I thought, what am I seeing? And what I was seeing was an animal that had air hunger. Its poor little neck was stretched out. It was making a terrible noise, and it was drinking. It was going over, when it blundered over to the water trough, it was drinking loads and loads and loads of water. So I thought, okay, I'll try bryonia. It's so strange you should be talking about bryonia earlier and the water. And we got up every 2 hours to give the calf remedies. And by 5 o'clock in the morning, the calf's neck was no longer stretched out. It wasn't drinking the huge amounts of water from the water trough. The breathing was still terrible, but not as terrible. And his little ears and his nose were warm. And I thought, oh my good God, there really is something in this. And that was the point that I decided to retrain as a homeopath. So that was how I came to do it. So fast forward to me and a fairly ruined gut, I would say, after 20 years of serious pressure and stress. And I looked around to see, at this stage, I didn't know that much. I was training myself as a homeopath, so I didn't know about things, magic things like bowel no-suds. I was just kind of blundering around myself, and I thought there has to be something I can do here. And that's how I discovered fermentation and what your gut was actually doing for you and what your gut wasn't doing for you in my case. So I Facebook is a marvelous place because I went onto a marvelous group called UK Fermenting Friends, and they had all of these kind of, a bit like myself, probably half mad people who were just absolutely mad about ferments and all things fermented. They were really, really generous people, really, really generous with their knowledge. And that's where I started my journey in relation to fermented foods. And I discovered that basically we're composed of trillions of bacteria, trillions and trillions. They live in all of our orifices. They live in our noses. They live in our ears. They live in our rectums. They live all over our skin. They live in our mouths. Excuse me. And we live in a very, very strange time where on one level we're so anti-nature, we're anti-everything. Everything is antibacterial, anti-this, anti-that. And what we're actually doing, in my estimation, is kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, because we are composed of microbes, and yet a huge amount of the things that we use in our houses are antibacterial. We think that we're just eliminating dangerous bacteria. We're not eliminating dangerous bacteria. We're eliminating all bacteria. So what I found anyway was that, and there's a particular bugbear of mine at the moment, actually. There's an ad on the telly at the moment. I don't know what it's for. It's maybe for a mouthwash or something like that. And this guy comes on and he intones, oh, what bacteria are hiding in your mouth. Now that absolutely infuriates me, because they're not hiding in your mouth, they're living in your mouth. And where they're living, what they're living in your mouth, and they're doing a job in your mouth. They're maintaining the pH of your saliva, they're maintaining the health of your teeth and your gums, because they're maintaining your health of your saliva and your pH of your saliva. They're also maintaining the health of your digestive enzymes. And the thing about your digestive enzymes is that you mightn't know this, but I remember it from biology in oh my God, like I suppose when they were kind of rubbing two sticks together, it's that long ago, that starch starts being digested in your mouth. So when you eat that slice of toast, your digestion of that starch starts in your mouth. So it's imperative that your digestive enzymes are also in good order. So if we're swooshing these awful, awful bloody things in our mouths, denuding our mouths of all of our good bacteria, we're not doing ourselves any favors. And that's a really, 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 it's a huge issue, I think, this mindset that we have of that is so anti-nature. They're there for a reason. All of these things are there for a reason, but like everything, they have to be in balance. And it's our job is to maintain them in balance and to foster them and to mind them. So, so for instance, if you're talking about the bacteria that live in your nose, they live among these teeny tiny little hairs that are in your up at the back of your nose. And those hairs and those bacteria are your first line of defense when you breathe in something like a germ. And that's why it's so important that everything should be functioning and everything should be healthy. So back to me, what I found was that I started with milk kefir. I started my own journey with milk kefir, and milk kefir is a ferment that you can make on your countertop. It's like a pourable yogurt. In my experience of it, I suppose, suggesting it to mums, I would say to them that what you can do with your milk kefir is you can make it into a very, very delicious smoothie. If you add a banana, you add a little bit of vanilla, you add some honey, you can add blueberries, something like that, and swish it up in a NutriBullet or something like that. And it makes an absolutely delicious, delicious smoothie. That's what I would often have if I was flying out somewhere or whatever, and I didn't have the time or the inclination to have a proper breakfast. I would have a smoothie. And what I found, this was the really interesting thing that I found myself in my own journey, was that my sleep improved. When I started taking the milk kefir, my sleep improved, my mood improved, My bowels improved, which was a big one for me because I had suffered a lot from constipation over the years in terms of, which again relates back to stress and probably not drinking as much as I should have. But that definitely improved. Another really interesting thing that improved was I stopped needing to use a deodorant. My sweat didn't smell anymore. And ordinarily when you sweat, your bacterial profile that's inside comes out on your skin. It's released because our skin is an organ of elimination as well. People think that it's only your liver and your kidneys that actually excrete things. Your skin is a massive, massive organ of elimination. So I found that my sweat wasn't smelling because my bacteria were in better order. And God, I saved myself a fortune in terms of those crystal salt deodorants and Tom's of Maine and so on. So I was really happy about that. Another thing that I found, and this was my own experience, another thing that I found was, I suppose in the 4 years or so before I had started on the ferments, on my ferment journey, I used to get round about August, I would get an itchy soft palate, itchy back of my nose, sometimes itchy ears, itchy eyes. Nothing that you'd kind of, I mean, I'm not one for taking things for anything anyway, but it was annoying. I don't even know what it was that I was having a problem with in August, but every August, July, August, this would happen to me. And I noticed that that stopped. That just went. Suddenly I just didn't have it anymore. And another thing that happened was that, again, probably around the time that I would have had the itchy eyes and the itchy nose and so on, if I got bitten by a horsefly, and as I said, we live on a farm, I have rescue horses, horseflies are a kind of a given. If I got bitten by a horsefly or I got bitten by a midge, I would rock up in a huge wheal that size that would be red and raised and itchy as hell. And that would go on for maybe 10 days. And that stopped. And what that told me was, combined with the issue about the itchy nose, eyes, and ears and so on, was that my histamine production in my gut was being modulated by the kefir. My histamine kind of overreaction to things was being modulated by the kefir. So that was an absolutely fantastic thing for me. I was just thrilled. But they were kind of things that kind of snuck up on me. So in terms of kefir, milk kefir, a lot of people would say, oh, I have a problem with milk. Sometimes, actually a lot of times in my experience, milk kefir is not a problem for people because the bacteria themselves consume the lactose that's in the milk. That's the milk sugar, if you like. They consume that. So what you're drinking at the end of the process doesn't have lactose. Now, if you have a casein intolerance, that's a different ballgame. But for a lot of people, it's a lactose intolerance. And the benefits of milk kefir, if you can tolerate it, or if you like it and it does good by you, are manifold. They're huge. I mean, a yogurt would have maybe 2 to 3 strains of lactobacillus. Milk kefir could have between 30 to 50, depending on your environment. It's just magic stuff for your gut. And that was my own experience of it, was that it was just magic for my gut. From there, I bounced into things like kombucha, which is a sweetened tea ferment. Again, you can do it on your countertop. Now, Antoinette, you said last week my house was like, my kitchen was like a kind of it's got all these kind of simmering pots and vessels and so on. You do have to treat these things a bit like a pet. You do have to mind them. I'm not going to say that they're that they mind themselves. You do have to mind them. I mean, with your kefir, you'll be talking about maybe giving them fresh milk, giving your kefir grains fresh milk every 24 to 48 hours and straining it off. But you will find that probably like me, everything in this house gets it. The dogs get it, the cats get it, the husband gets it. I don't necessarily mean in that order. I'm not saying Paul is below all of the rest of the animals, particularly if he's listening to this. Of course, you're not, darling. But everything in my house gets it. And I just think I think it's magic stuff. You can use it in lieu of buttermilk if you're baking soda bread. You can make what they call kefir cheese out of it, where you can make, you know, that really soft cheese, spreadable cheese, and again you're getting a huge amount of probiotics in your kefir cheese. So, I mean, the next thing that occurred to me was in my journey was where do we get these? Where do we get these naturally? How come we have to now in this era? How come we have to work so hard at our gut health when people previously would have? What did they do? And I read a book, a really, really interesting book by a man called Dr. William Davis, who he also wrote a book, a great book actually called Wheat Belly, but that's another day's work actually in relation to cereals and whether we can tolerate them, etc., etc. But he wrote a great book about gut health. And what I learned from his book was that as in addition to our lives, which our lovely mums give us, they also seed us with our microbiome as we pass down the birth canal. So we're there passing down the birth canal. We get all of these marvelous bacteria on our skin. We breathe them in. We get them in our mouth. They go into our ears. They go into our anus. That's how we actually emerge in the world with a fully formed, seeded bacterial profile. And for so many of the ladies that I mean, I pretty much exclusively treat children, but for a huge amount of the ladies that I treat, I'll find that there's C-sections involved. So the littles aren't getting that seeding when they arrive onto dry land. And interestingly, and I think to their shame, doctors and medics and so on are not saying this to people. They're not saying how important it is to women that this should be built up again. As I said to you, the soil these days, it's really interesting the way the soil, our own soil, is being I suppose damaged to such a degree, and also the soil that we actually grow our food in is being depleted. We use so many chemicals, we use so many herbicides and pesticides, and we use so many things that are just so bad for the earth. I mean, we use Roundup, we use all of these things, we use them in our garden, and they are all endocrine disruptors. They are all things that disrupt our profile of our microbiome. I mean, for instance, I read a fantastic book last year, which was called Rewilding, and it was about a stately home in England. I think they have some massive amount of ground, and what they decided to do was, instead of farming, they would rewild their ground, and they took on old varieties of pigs and so on, who would kind of truffle around, and the pigs would open up the undergrowth, and they would allow new trees to grow. And one of the fascinating facts that I found in that book was, when you look at earthworms you think they're zooming around on the earth and they're ingesting the decaying matter, and then they're spewing it out at the other end. Earthworms have a kind of a mucus on them to enable them to go around easily in the earth, and that mucus contains bacteria, and the bacteria are gifted by the earthworm to the earth. So when we're throwing chemicals and pesticides and herbicides and so on into the earth, what we're actually doing is we're like the man standing in a tree chainsawing the branch that he's standing on. We are just the most, in many ways, a ridiculous species, because we need these things. What we're doing is we're then growing our food in this earth, which has really nothing to give, and then the food that we're eating is not sustaining our microbiome. It's not supporting us the way it should, because it's not nutrient dense. So I'll talk to you at the end about 5 things that you can do to kind of help your own microbiome. But that's the microbiome of the soil. And what they're actually finding is, just in relation, getting back to the ladies and the baby coming down the birth canal, the baby can only get what the mum has. And what they're actually finding is that in the last 20 to 30 years, because of our lifestyle, because of the way our water is toxic, our air is toxic, our food is full of these things, what they're actually finding is that bacteria, which have been historically in our mums, are no longer there to be gifted to little ones. So it's really, really, really important to kind of try to pull this back, as far as I'm concerned anyway. What else did I want to talk to you about? Yeah, children, little children, as far as I can see, are actually, do you remember was it in the early 19th century, when miners would go down mines and they always took a little bird with them? They took a canary in a little cage with them, because birds are very sensitive to gases. So the miners would take the canary in a little cage down to the mine with them. And if the canary keeled over and died, they then knew that there was gases down there, and they would get out of there very quickly. And I think that children are so ill these days with so many kind of chronic complaints. There's so much gluten intolerances. There's so many allergies. There are so many complaints in little ones who should be at the start of their lives and having none of these complaints, that I feel that children are the canary in the coal mine. Children are saying to us, we cannot continue doing to the world what we're doing. We just cannot continue. So the other thing, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is antibiotics. I mean, people think, I used to think, that you think, okay, I have a complaint or I have something, and I go to the doctor and I get an antibiotic, and that's just the baddies knocked on the head. But it's not the baddies knocked on the head. It's your whole microbiome. Everything in your microbiome is eliminated. So that's why oftentimes, say, if you go to the doctor with a UTI, you get an antibiotic, and what happens is you will get a dreadful attack of candida afterwards. You'll get terrible thrush, and you won't know why. It's because in your microbiome, which has been, hopefully, if it's in a state of balance, if it's not in a state of balance, actually, what happens is the opportunistic bacteria, such as the candida bacteria, decide to go party, and they recover faster than the other ones, and that's where we get thrush. So it is the effect of antibiotics can't be underestimated, and it really is to doctors' shame that they have kids coming into them time and time and time and time again, because these are the little children who end up coming to me, and their mums say, yeah, he's had 7 or 8 antibiotics in the last 6 months. It's to doctors' shame that they're not saying, what can I do about this? What can I suggest to this person? It's really not good enough to give children antibiotic after antibiotic and expect that this will not impact on their health going forward in terms of their immunity, their everything. It impacts everything. Our gut impacts everything. I have a lovely client, and she knows who she is. She's here tonight. She would always say to me that she knows when her kids' stomachs, or when their gut is out, because their mood will be off, their behavior will be off. And this is a huge, huge issue. And I think it's just snowballing. It's not going to get smaller unless we do something and pull this back. And we really, really need to. And that's why it's so fantastic to see mums, ordinary lovely women like us, just take things into their own hands and bring their kids to homeopaths, entertain complementary therapies where conventional just isn't hacking it for them. Or go off and study and become a home prescriber themselves, and be like Antoinette said, her kids have never had an antibiotic. I mean, how fantastic. With that, you can rejuvenate your microbiome. You can help. There's so many things you can do with the ferments and with a probiotic, even getting a probiotic. Just go off and get a probiotic. let me think. I'm just looking at my notes here in relation to what I wanted to say. I wanted to talk about the kefir. I wanted to talk about kombucha. If a child positively can't tolerate milk kefir, you can get a thing called water kefir that is made, and it's a bit like a sort of a soda pop, and that's usually very popular with kids because you can flavor it with all sorts of fruit juices, and it can be fizzy. And to my detriment, I discovered how fizzy it was as a bottle. The top kind of pushed, and kind of a huge fountain all over my kitchen ceiling, which still hasn't been repainted, she said shamelessly. Sometimes people would say, I suppose, I mean, I felt this feeling of despair at like, what can you do? And I saw a great meme the other day, and the meme said, it was a little picture of a cartoon world, and the world is crying, and the caption, the meme, actual text of the meme said, I'm only one person. I can't do anything, said 7 billion people. So I really think we need to empower ourselves. I really think we need to, it's the power of one. It starts with you. Your family's health is starts with you. You can make huge changes just by doing that. My 5 top tips, because that's what I was going to say to you. That was what I was going to finish, because I'm now, oh God. My 5 top tips about what you can do. Look at the products that you're using in your home. Read the labels. If you are looking at, I mean, I was stymied today because I have nothing in my house like that. But I think I had to go out and find a squeezy bottle from something that we must have used maybe 10 years ago, and it's now used for something else. And it was for, I think, a non-brand named washing up liquid. And on the back of it, it has, and I'm quite sure you'll find this on other things, it has a little kind of diamond shape and an exclamation mark in it. And it talks about it being hazardous. It's hazardous to marine animals. It's hazardous. If you get it on your skin, wash it off immediately. If you get it in your eyes, go to your doctor, wash your eyes out immediately. And this is the stuff that we're spraying into our sinks, and we are breathing in those vapors when in the steam as we wash our dishes. So look at what you have in your house. Forget about antibacterial wipes. Nobody needs them. Cleanliness can be achieved with just lemon juice, vinegar, if you like smellies, some essential oil, lemon juice, vinegar, and bicarb is all I use to clean my house. We don't have any of those poisonous things in my house. In my house, so start reading your labels and stop using things like that. Stop using bactericides because they're dreadful. They are dreadful things. There's a research to say that children who come from super clean houses are oftentimes children with the least resistance to disease. They will be the children who have the allergies. They will be the children who have a lot of health challenges because they're not gaining any exposure to the bacteria that are everywhere that we need. The second thing I would say is look at what you're putting on your body. That's another huge thing. Read your labels. You would not believe the amount of things that are kind of byproducts of the petrochemical industry that are put into things like that you use, like, I don't know, your shower gel. There's foaming agents. They're a byproduct of the petrochemical industry. There are all of these things that actually denude your microbiome and then dry out your skin and leave you just totally vulnerable because your microbiome is minding you. You have to change your mindset and think, these are minding me. These are there for a reason. The third thing I would say, choose food which is being grown organically. You don't have to go wild. You don't have to stress yourself about this. Try one a week. Just go, all of the chains and all of the supermarkets do offer organic food now. Go get your potatoes organically this week. Go get your peppers. Look at the dirty dozen of really sprayed fruit and veg and try to get one of those organically. Apples, believe it or not, are in the dirty dozen. Apples are massively sprayed. So try to buy organic. It's a vote for your microbiome because you're not assaulting your microbiome and that of your kids. in good faith, you think you're doing great things, but you're not assaulting the microbiome with these things, these awful poisons. Basically, they're just poisons. What was my next one? Take a good probiotic. Just start off with a probiotic. If you don't fancy getting into the fermentation and you've enough to be doing with your kids and your house and your job and your husband, again, I'm really sorry for husbands there. You'll note where they were in the order. Just buy a good probiotic. Optibac do a good children's probiotic. Udo's is a good child, baby and infant probiotic. BioGaia offer a very good child probiotic as well. So just do that and see if you can actively foster your gut health in that way. The other things are just practical. Let your kids play, let your kids outside, let your kids get dirty. How often do we see kids with dirty faces these days? I grew up with dirty faces. My brothers constantly had dirty faces. I had dirty knees. You came in and you were filthy because you were playing in the dirt and the dust and the earth. They're now finding that the actual microbes in the earth are good for us. And that's what we need to be letting our children do. And lastly, don't bathe them every night. Little children don't need to be bathed every night. I don't know when this thing came in. It maddens me. When did this come in that people throw their kids into a bath every night? Unless it's something that's useful and your child needs it for kind of downtime and you time, don't bathe them every night. They don't even have the hormones. They're not sweating. They're not dirty. Just don't do that. So if you're interested in a more profound kind of way of healing, I suppose, the gut, and you have a child with more challenges, look at Natasha Campbell McBride's GAPS diet. And that's pretty much all I have to say. My own journey has been a fantastic one. It's opened a wealth of things for me, and it's improved my health enormously. So there you are, girlies.
Hey, thank you so much. That was amazing. I knew it was going to be amazing, but you've just blown me away. And I thought I knew this stuff. I thought I knew everything you're going to talk about, and I didn't. And I think we can all just really improve. I know I definitely can improve on things in this house. It was fabulous. I just wanted to add as well, we our gut is really affected by synthetic hormones too. So if you're on contraceptives, you've got a coil, you're on HRT, and suddenly you're having gut issues, that could be the culprit. And that was actually very emotional, Dee. And you said about our kids are the budgies down the mine.
Yeah.
It's imperative that we do something, we get going straight away. And I love the idea of buying one organic veg a week and just getting going that way. And
Work up.
yeah, that's brilliant. And like all those cleaners that we're buying they build up. The cost mounts with all those cleaners, those sprays, whatever, but vinegar is cheap. You can buy like 5 liters of vinegar very, very cheaply. And then maybe while you're saving on cleaning products, you could put towards food or start growing some food.
There's a wonderful tip you can actually do is like if you have lemon peel or orange peel or anything like that, cut it up small and throw that in and it'll flavor your vinegar, and then you have lemon scented vinegar.
Brilliant. Someone said, can you repeat the name of the author of the GAPS diet, please?
Oh, she's Natasha. I think she's a doctor, actually. I think, anyway, would say Natasha Campbell McBride, CAMPBELL-McBride, MCBRIDE.
Okay.
She's all about bone broth and healing the gut and a kind of basically reintroducing, as the gut heals, reintroducing foods to the little one.
Okay, everybody's really happy with that. My sister was here, she said that was super. Lisa said absolutely brilliant. Kathy said thanks so much, it was amazing. And thanks so much, really informative. Claire said absolutely brilliant. Anya, thanks a million. Danny, thanks so much, ladies. Oh, and you're here live, Danny. Yay. Marcella said it was really interesting. If anybody wants to get in touch with Dee, she's on Instagram as the gardening homeopath. I think, is it gardening_homeopath?
Yeah, I don't know. It was ridiculous kind of a handle, I think it's called. I don't know why I made it so difficult.
Well, I'll be posting it everywhere. What's your website?
My website is Dee Morris Homeopathy.
Okay.
.com.
Most of you will know Dee, because I always I send my children to her, my child clients, my prospective child clients. Somebody's looking for Kieran Burke's number. I'm just going to give that out. Should I give it out on the live call? Do you know what? Get in touch with me. I'll better ask him if I can give out his number. Sharon said, thank you so much. Next week, Deirdre, that was just powerful. Thank you. You're an absolute star, and thanks for giving so freely of your time and your wisdom. We greatly appreciate it, and we appreciate you. Sharon is there. Your mate Sharon is there saying thanks so much. That was fantastic. I'm just going to mute you for a sec, Dee. Next week we have next week I'm talking about periods. So maybe you're no longer having periods, but this stuff is for everybody as usual, because there are young girls in our lives, there are other women in our lives, and maybe we could just help ease some of their suffering. And there is a lot of suffering when it comes to periods. So I am talking about remedies. I'm talking about the menstrual cycle in general, some tips to help that. Thanks, Susan. And my special guest next week is Joanne Callan, and some of you will know Joanne from Try the Alternative. That's one of her Instagram pages. She has several strings to her bow as well, and she has another site called Changing Cycles Social Enterprise. So she teaches. She goes around to schools. She teaches kids about their menstrual cycles. She works with adults. She does great work. But I'm bringing her on to talk about first periods and how to prepare your child, your grandchild, your little sister for her first period in a really positive, empowering way, so that she's not dreading it. Because I think I said last week, I only treat women with mostly only treat women with problems with their periods. And when I asked them what was their first period like, did they know what it was? They were dreading it, because it wasn't seen as a very positive thing in their household. Maybe mum really struggled with hers, so they were picking up all these visual cues, even if the mother never said anything. Or maybe they just didn't know what it was, and they suddenly found blood and they were terrified. And so Joanne is coming on to talk about that. She's going to be back in a few weeks to talk about something else. And Claudia says, really brilliant, informative session. Loving these meets. Next week sounds fantastic. It will be. Joanne is fantastic too. And Sean says, can't wait for next week. Are you also talking ovulation pain, discomfort? Probably not ovulation pain next week. I think we'll have enough with the other stuff, but definitely remedies and tips to help deal with painful periods, maybe heavy bleeding, just things you can do even if you don't have remedies, and just to help us connect a little bit more with our cycle, because we often only connect with our cycle when we have painful periods. And of course our cycle is the whole month, it's the whole 28 days or the whole 32 days. So it's a shame to just only tune in when it's causing us a little bit of discomfort or a lot of discomfort. If there's any questions, do you want to post them now? And I'm going to let you go because I know it's up on an hour and a quarter. Please do invite anyone you want to these chats. This is all going up on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. It's just Antoinette McQueenie Homeopathy. You can share the links there or go subscribe. I had a big clear out, so all the old videos are gone. It's only the new stuff. It's only the Homeo Huddles. And I think that's it. Unless there's any other questions. So Dee is the woman to go to with children with gut issues, and she's pretty amazing, as you've all seen. Okay, I am going to stop the recording.